Alex, I walked into the garage this morning and smelled that specific scent. It's like a mix of hot pennies and a burnt Sunday roast. It's the smell of a project that didn't want to stay joined together.
Is this about that indestructible lawn tractor hitch you tried to stick weld yesterday? Because I saw it in the scrap bin. It looked like a pigeon with a very upset stomach had been visiting.
Listen, we all have those days where the arc just won't behave. But it got me thinking, people look at these professional shops with $20,000 CNC plasma tables and synchronized ventilation systems, and they think, I can't do this. I don't have the NASA budget.
Right. They think they need a dedicated hanger and a three-phase power drop just to fix a gate hinge. But we've both seen people pull off amazing work in a single-car garage footprint.
Exactly. You can build a world-class sanctuary of sparks on a shoestring if you're smart about where you put your nickels. But you've got to be honest about the space. If you try to weld next to your collection of vintage oily rags and your lawnmower's gas can, well, you aren't making art. You're making a fire department news story.
Dramatic, Tiger. Very dramatic, but true. Step one is usually the most boring, the uncluttering.
It really is. I tell folks all the time, find a 4x4 foot square. If you can get 6x6, you're living in a palace. But that space has to be a no-fly zone for anything that likes to burn. I'm talking paint cans, sawdust, that pile of cardboard boxes you're saving for moving day.
And the floor? I've seen some people try to weld on top of old plywood flooring.
That's a recipe for a very slow, very expensive campfire under your feet. Bare concrete is your best friend. If you've got a wooden floor, you better be laying down some heavy-duty cement board or a welding mat. But honestly, concrete is the gold standard.
Okay, so we've cleared the combustion corner. Now, let's talk power. Because I know you've tried to run a welder off a daisy-chained extension cord before. Don't deny it.
Guilty. Back in the day, I tried to run a tombstone welder off a 20-foot household cord. The cord got so soft, it felt like a cooked noodle. That's how you burn your house down from the inside of the walls out.
Not a great look for the neighborhood.
No. Most modern budget welders, like the ones you see on Amazon, are actually pretty clever. They use these multi-voltage plugs. You can run them on 120-volt household outlets for thin stuff, or 240 volt if you've got a dryer outlet nearby. But the rule of thumb is, stay close to the breaker. The longer that lead is, the more your voltage drops, and suddenly your pro weld looks like a row of cold caterpillars.
Cold caterpillars. I'm writing that down. So if someone is setting this up today, they should check their fuse box first, right?
Absolutely. Look for a 20 amp or 30 amp circuit. If you're sharing a circuit with the deep freezer and the garage door opener, you're going to be resetting that breaker every time you pull a trigger. It's worth a couple $100 to have a Sparky come out and drop a dedicated line if you're serious.
Let's talk about the lungs of the operation. Ventilation. I read a study that said welding fumes were reclassified as a serious carcinogen. Is a cracked garage door enough?
I used to think so. I just open the window and pray for a breeze, but that's just moving the poison around. If you're doing this on a budget, you don't need a $5,000 fume hood, but you do need local exhaust ventilation.
Like those portable fume extractors?
Yeah, or a high volume fan positioned specifically to pull the air away from your face and out a vent. Never push the air toward you. You want to see that smoke heading for the exit like it just realized it left the stove on.
Fair enough. Now, for the fun part. The gear. If I've got $500 and a dream, what am I actually buying first?
You're gonna laugh, but the first thing isn't the welder. It's the table. You can't weld on the floor unless you want your lower back to retire by Tuesday.
But a good welding table costs more than the welder sometimes.
Only if you buy it pre-made. This is where the maker part of the hobby kicks in. Go to a local scrapyard, look for a piece of steel plate. 1/2 inch thick is the dream, but even 3/8 will do. If it's got some rust, that's just character you can grind off. Weld up some legs out of square tubing.
Isn't there a chicken and the egg problem there? You need a table to weld the table?
You caught me. That's the classic shop paradox. For your first one, you use a couple of sturdy sawhorses and a thick piece of scrap metal. It'll be ugly, it'll be wobbly, and you'll hate it, which is exactly the motivation you need to weld its replacement.
Okay, let's talk about the war wagon. I saw that in one of your old shop tours. Most people just buy a cheap rolling cart, but you're a big fan of the DIY version.
The war wagon is just a fancy name for a bottle cart on steroids. See, those gas cylinders, the shielding gas for MiG or TIG, they're basically heavy, upright torpedoes. If you knock one over and the valve shears off, well, movies make it look like a missile. In reality, it's just a very heavy, very loud disaster that'll crush your toes before you can say oops.
So the cart isn't just for mobility, it's for not ending up in the ER.
Exactly. Build a cart that holds your welder on top and chains your bottle down tight. Make it low profile so it won't tip. I once saw a guy try to move a full-size oxygen bottle by walking it across a gravel driveway. He tripped. The bottle didn't explode, but the sound it made when it hit the ground, I think my ears are still ringing 10 years later.
I can imagine. So, welder, table, cart? What about the stuff that keeps us from going blind or catching on fire? Safety gear can get pricey.
Don't skimp on the hood, please. You can get a budget auto-darkening helmet, but make sure it has a high rating. I used a cheap no-name hood once that had a slight delay. Every time I struck an arc, I got a split second of flash. By the end of the day, it felt like someone had rubbed sand in my eyes.
That sounds miserable.
It's called arc eye, and it's the kind of lesson you only want to learn once. Get a decent hood, some real leather gloves, none of that synthetic stuff that melts to your skin, and a cotton or leather apron. Synthetic shirts are the enemy. If a spark hits a polyester shirt, it doesn't just burn a hole, it turns into hot plastic and welds itself to your chest.
My goodness. Woodworking seems so much safer now. At least the wood doesn't melt onto you.
No, it just throws splinters at your face.
Let's wrap this up with the actual machine. For the home DIYer on a budget, MIG is usually the recommendation, right?
MIG is the hot glue gun of the metal world. It's intuitive, it's fast, and for 90% of home projects, fixing a mower deck, building a workbench, making some garden art, it's perfect. TIG is beautiful, but it's like learning to play the violin while unicycling. Start with MIG.
Any specific tip for the first-timer picking up a torch this weekend?
Patience. Your first weld is going to look like a pile of bird droppings. That's okay. Grinders and paint make a welder what he ain't. Just keep that arc short, watch the puddle, and don't forget to turn the gas on.
Believe it or not, that's actually helpful.
I try. Look, a home shop isn't about having the best tools. It's about having a space where you're not afraid to fail. You buy the cheap welder, you build the scrap table, and you learn. The metal doesn't care how much you spend on your setup. It only cares about the heat and the hand holding the torch.
That's a good note to end on. Go make some sparks, people. Just don't set your garage on fire.
And check your fire extinguisher. Seriously, do it now.